Ahead on American Black Journal, minority businesses in Southeast Michigan have another resource available to help them survive and grow. We'll get details on the new multi-million-dollar Minority Business Access Fund. Plus, we'll hear how a local woman is encouraging young girls of color to embrace their beauty. That's coming up now on American Black Journal.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Minority-owned businesses in Detroit and Southeast Michigan now have a new pool of money available to help them stay afloat. The $100 million Minority Business Access Fund is designed to assist small to medium-sized companies with their cash flow needs. These loans will help bridge the gap for minority-owned firms that are often turned down by traditional lending institutions. Joining me now is the architect of the fund, Louis Green, who's the president and CEO of the Michigan Minority Supplier Development Council. Welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you, Stephen.
Obviously, it sounds like a wonderful idea and very much on target for a very important problem. Any business you talk to will talk about cash flow and access to capital as one of their issues. That seems like it's always a bigger problem when you're talking about minority businesses.
Yeah, it is absolutely. Minority businesses traditionally have had just severe discrepancies in access to capital. There's a pretty well-known study in the business community done by the U.S. Minority Business Administration that showed black businesses in particular were more likely to get turned down for loans. When they did get loans, they were approved for lower amounts. Those loans were at higher interest rates.
Sure.
And the experience was so bad with them for banks that they just decided not to even apply.
Yeah.
People were so discouraged by the process.
Right. And this fund targets a very discrete problem with businesses, which is cash flow, which is a different kind of problem from some of the other things that you need money for.
Yeah, cash flow is probably one of the things that make or break businesses. People understand that once they're in business.
Yeah.
And so, you know, at the Michigan Minority Supplier Development Council, we've been able to connect our minority businesses with over $25 billion in contracts last year. And that's great. If you have $2 million that's coming from Ford 90 days from now,
right,
and you have employees you need to pay every 2 weeks, suppliers for raw material, and you don't have the money until that check comes, you will go out of business. And
right,
so people sometimes will factor, they'll sell their receivables, they'll do anything they can to stay afloat. And some people can't, and they go out of business.
Right. One of the things I think people don't necessarily know is that you can be a profitable, quote unquote, business and go out of business because your cash flow doesn't work in a way to keep you open.
And that's exactly right. Coming out of the recession, which was tough for everyone and tougher for minority businesses, we lost about 615 minority-owned businesses.
Uh-huh.
Out of those 615, about 580 were profitable.
Right.
But they didn't have positive cash flow.
Right. And that's a staggering number. Is that number Detroit or is that number Southeast Michigan?
That was state of Michigan.
State of Michigan, right. 600 minority
that were part of our organization.
Right.
So that was out of 1,800 businesses at the time. So it was a third of folks that were in the industry.
Right. What are some of the reasons that you feel like the lack of access to capital persists? I mean, obviously there's historic racism that has prevented not just black businesses, but black people can't get loans for those reasons. But are there other factors that are driving that are sort of in the way?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. One, people do business with people who they know, like, and trust.
Right.
Sure. It's a lot of relationship, and there aren't relationships with the bank. And I won't necessarily attribute that to racism, but there is a big kind of chasm between the banking community and minority businesses. They don't attend they're not members of the same golf club. They don't tend to have, kids in the same school districts.
Sure.
And so, there's not a relationship that's there, and so there's not.
And that has a lot to do with lending. maybe shouldn't, but it does.
And it absolutely is. It's probably one of the biggest factors. So there's not a trust level, and so their access to capital, just from that very beginning point, you start to have a problem.
Right, right. When you were talking about Detroit businesses, we have seen a lot of attention from banks recently in Detroit saying, look, we understand that there's underinvestment here, there's opportunity, we want to be part of that. Are they helping to fill that gap too?
Maybe. I haven't seen it as much. I haven't seen it as much. I mean, I think in some ways this fund is a result of the banking community being inaccessible to minority businesses. And I don't think it's that the banks aren't trying and that they don't care.
Right.
Is that they don't get it.
Right.
And there is no relationship there. And so, again, the data shows that these black businesses won't even go to the banks anymore. There's another study that the Federal Reserve issued that people would sooner talk to a neighbor, whoever, your barber or beautician or anyone else other than the banker because of lack of trust.
To get money.
Yeah.
In other words, you will go someplace else.
To have the conversation about it, not even to try to borrow, but there's a lot of work, I think, an opportunity that the banking community can do, but the needs are too great, as Southeast Michigan in particular with the M1 rail, the Arena District, all these great projects, to make sure that minority businesses are fully participating in there, we needed to make sure something was in place. Because all this development, you worry about gentrification, about people getting passed by. We wanted to put a marker in to make sure that this wasn't going to happen.
Right. I live downtown, and so I dodge orange barrels and construction equipment all the time, it seems like right now. I have never, frankly, seen downtown Detroit as active in that way as I do right now. I gotta say, I don't see as many black faces on those jobs as you might expect. I will say that M1 seems to be an exception. I've seen lots of African Americans, it seems like, working on that. But you talk about the stuff that is going on with Bedrock, the different projects there, the apartment buildings that are being redone. It doesn't seem like there's equal access.
Well, it hasn't. I don't know about equal access. Definitely not equal results, right?
Right.
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 And I think that comes from again lack of access to that. And again, it goes back to people who do business with who they know, like, and trust.
Right.
And so, lots of good people in this town. The folks at Bedrock are good folks. Lots of good folks, but it really takes a kind of a focused act to get some different results.
You have to make an effort.
You have to make it happen. And I think some people say, "Oh, is this an affirmative act?" No, there are highly qualified businesses. It's unfortunate we have people who can do work in Beijing or Shanghai, but can't do work on woodwork, right?
Detroit.
And so we have construction firms that do work in China, but aren't working in Detroit, and it is a little baffling.
Right, right. One of the things we saw with the Red Wings district proposal was a fight over the idea of a community benefits agreement, which we didn't end up getting there, and now City Council is saying, well, maybe we ought to pass a law that says you have to have that. They're thinking in the same way that participation matters, and who gets to be part of these developments and the comeback depends on who has access to these things. Do you feel like that's a good way to approach that?
Yeah, I think fundamentally, yeah, I think you have to be nuanced, because you don't want to get it to the point where it becomes. I have minority businesses who are trying to do $1 million expansion, and they don't want to get burdened by the paper. So if you sit at the right levels, it's very important, because it's not happening organically, right? You want to make sure it happens, but not in a way that stifles growth. So it takes some balance, but it absolutely is going to be necessary at some level.
Yeah. Do you see, what about in the neighborhoods? I mean, we're now talking about a lot in Detroit that downtown and midtown are on this upswing, and there's no question that seems real, but that the neighborhoods are not benefiting. Seems like this issue fits into that.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing we're excited about, is that a lot of those projects in the neighborhood are really cash flow intensive, needed projects, and one of the things out of this $100 million in less than 2 weeks after we announced it, $18 million is already out the door. Right?
Is that right?
And so that tells you about the demand
How
for that.
much of the
and
pent-up
some of those
need
projects are
was.
going towards some things that are going to be in neighborhoods. So we're really excited about that.
Right, right. What about the role of the DEGC in Detroit? They handle a lot of development downtown and in the neighborhoods. Have they been active and partners with you guys in diversifying who gets what?
Yeah, they have been. They've been good partners. Again, there are lots of good partners in this town. I mean, I think the challenge is that people, when they hear minority business, sometimes they think small out of necessity, right? That it's a small business. Some people probably think not as good. The whisper,
Sure.
right? But so yeah, DEGC's been good. Mayors, there are lots of folks who are participating, but we need a little bit more than participation now, right? We need a cohesive strategy to ensure results that are going to be good for everyone in this community, right? These minority businesses don't only hire people of color, they disproportionately will hire people from the neighborhoods because they know them. But they're really going to be key to the overall sustainable economic development in Detroit.
That's right. I mean, and one of the stats that I look at all the time that we don't talk that much about is how many businesses we have lost in the city of Detroit over the last 40 years. I mean, you're talking about 75, 85,000 businesses that have either gone out of business or some of them have, of course, moved to other places. But that has a lot to do with the instability, the economic instability in these neighborhoods.
No, it is, and a culture of entrepreneurship, I think, is important. We were, a kind of a company culture, get a job in a factory, good job, and they provided a good middle class lifestyle.
Right.
But when you pass away, your good job passes away with you.
Right.
So really the culture of entrepreneurship, of owning and meeting community needs by community-based businesses that we can now fund with community sources, I think is really going to be important for Detroit's future.
Right. So if I'm a small business owner and I want to participate in this, how do I do that?
Well, the easiest thing is go to our website, minoritysupplier.org, and you can, think /MBA fund, such as the degree MBA fund, and you can get information there on the fund. You can fill out a form. We have been able to get money to people as quickly as 5 days. Usually, I think 10 days is more of a reasonable thing. And so we will work with you. And I think you can come into our office, and we're not there to sell you on the fund. If something's better for you, our folks will do that. We're not there to promote the fund. We're here to promote access to capital so folks can be successful.
Right, right. And when you're talking about a cash flow loan, sometimes, I mean, that's a very short-term need. I mean, I need the money now. I'll have it back in a couple of months. So does that help keep the fund intact and sort of revolving?
It does, and many times, first couple loans, we put a line of credit for $4 million for one minority business in Detroit. We put another $6 million line of credit because it allows them to do that. There's a roughly 45-day gap between when they have to pay money out and when they're going to get paid, and we now help them balance that time.
It's a cushion.
It's a cushion.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, great idea, and let's hope it makes a difference, not just in downtown and midtown, but throughout the city.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Steve.
Thanks for being here. Just ahead on American Black Journal, a local author is helping girls of color feel beautiful on the inside and the outside. That's next, right after this look at some important moments in Detroit's Black history.
I'm Ken Coleman with a look back at African American life in Detroit. This week in 1904, charismatic and popular cult leader Prophet Jones was born in Birmingham, Alabama. In 1977, Thomas Hearns scored a victory in his first pro boxing match at Olympia Stadium. And in 1968, Motown Records released Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by The Temptations. These are significant events this week in Detroit's Black history, taken from the book On This Day, African American Life in Detroit.
The White House has announced plans to focus on improving the lives of girls and women of color, much like the president's My Brother's Keeper initiative is doing for young men. My next guest is very familiar with some of the issues confronting minority females. As a teenager, Loretta Moorman had low self-esteem like many other girls of color, but she overcame her insecurities, and now Loretta is sharing her story in a new book titled Hello, My Name is Beautiful. She dispels some of the misconceptions that Black girls may have about themselves. And as a therapist and etiquette teacher, Loretta holds workshops to help young girls improve their self-esteem and their confidence. She talks to them about embracing their skin color, hair texture, and other characteristics that make them beautiful.
And you're still the refuge that I've just got to get to, so I won't let it take go, won't let it take go by. So put the drop top down, turn it up, I'm ready to fly. And ooh,
Loretta Moorman is here today to talk about her mission to inspire young girls. Welcome to American Black Journal. Boy, it's something to watch that, just see the looks on those girls' faces in that video. I can imagine just talking to them about this and just saying, look, there's a different way to see yourself. There's a different way to see who you are. That's got to make a huge difference.
Definitely. You know, I try to be as transparent as possible with the girls. As you stated, you know, I struggled with low self-esteem when I was a tween and a teenage girl. And I think a lot of it had to do with my environment. I grew up in predominantly white neighborhood. I went to predominantly white schools all my life, and I went to great schools. But there's a difference. There's a disconnect sometimes. Most definitely.
Yeah.
Most definitely. You know, I wouldn't see myself a lot of times, you know, when I would go to school. And I can recall different times when I was the outcast. I remember when I was like 8 years old, I didn't get invited to a party because of the color of my skin.
Right.
The girl told me, I'm not inviting you to your party, my party, because you're black.
Right.
You know, and so that created, you know, a disconnect for me, and I started to have identity issues.
Yeah, yeah. And so how did that play out? Talk about what that meant when you were that age, and then how you got to a better space.
Definitely. Well, I started having low self-esteem. I started to question, you know, okay, well, am I not beautiful because of the color of my skin? I mean, when I would look on TV, I mean, you know, even the media has a lot to do with it. You know, when I would look on TV, I would see Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera and all these beautiful white women who were promoted for their beauty, and they did not look like me.
Right.
And so when I went through high school, you know, and looked to these women as role models, it created insecurities within me because I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin.
Right.
And so, you know,
what turned the corner?
Yeah, definitely. I went to the University of Chicago. I was in grad school, and I was hanging out with a male friend of mine, and I was actually, you know, still struggling with some insecurities there, and I was venting to him about a mutual girlfriend of ours, and I was just, you know, so jealous of her because to me, she just seemed perfect. She had beautiful long hair, you know, she was like a model, so she was super small, just that image that you see on TV, you know. And he stopped me and he said, if you could meet yourself, if you knew who you were, you would never have to compare yourself. And so I had to really reflect on that and do like a self-assessment and see where the disconnect was.
Yeah.
And when I began to do that, I started to embrace myself and embrace the flaws that I had, because I had to realize everyone has flaws, right? I know B.E.A.U.T.I.F.U.L has a song now called Flawless, but even she has flaws, you know? The girls just don't see those flaws. And so I tried to be as transparent with these girls when I do these workshops as possible and let them know, hey, I'm not perfect. You know, I'm striving to get better and better myself every day, but I just had to embrace myself.
Right. And that imperfection does not take away from beauty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it seems like that's a role modeling dynamic that just is missing in a lot of girls' lives.
Definitely, definitely. I see that a lot when I go into the schools. A lot of girls are insecure about themselves, and they compare themselves to their peers, and they compare themselves to those images that they see in the media. And so, yeah, I just try to be that role model for them.
So tell me about your book.
Yes.
That really tells this story, right?
Yes, sir. So my book is called, again, Hello, My Name is Beautiful. And in the book, I basically just encourage and inspire young girls of color to embrace themselves and to be their own kind of beautiful, and not look to the media or society to define what beauty should look like for them.
Right.
And also to just be the best versions of themselves. I talk a lot about etiquette in the book. I am an advocate for etiquette. I think that it helps polish us off, and you know, I definitely think that it helps equip us in the real world.
Right.
So I talk about those things, and again, just for them to embrace who they are.
Yeah, yeah. I would also imagine that as they get to know you and see the experiences you had, I mean, University of Chicago education, now you've written a book, and a therapist and an etiquette advocate, you become someone that they're saying, hey, well, I could maybe do that, or that's a role model for me that maybe I don't have somewhere else.
That's definitely a goal of mine, is to just really be a role model for these girls. And I always let them know, you know, always dream, always believe. Don't ever let anybody tell you you can't be something. The only person that's going to stop you from reaching your potential and your goals is you. So yeah, I just try to encourage them.
Yeah,
'Cause a lot
yeah.
of them are lacking encouragement in their environment.
Right. You know, for years there's been this controversy over dolls that little girls play with, and
Yeah.
you know that famous study a long time ago about black girls
Yes.
who would, given the choice between two dolls, always describe the white doll more favorably.
Yes.
And then I guess they did it again recently, and
Yep.
there wasn't much difference. Now it seems like there are more dolls of color available, and I
There
can say
are.
that as the parent of a young girl of color. There's a lot of choices for my daughter in terms of dolls of all kinds of different colors. Is that making a difference, or is it going to make a difference that we haven't seen yet?
I definitely think it's making a difference. I know. Are you familiar with Cheryl Crowley? Pretty Brown Girls. I love
Pretty
that.
Brown Girls, those are-
Yes,
yeah.
I love her movement. You know, I really support her. But I think that it's making a difference because the girls are being able to see themselves. They're being able to see a doll that looks like them.
Right.
You know, and I didn't have that when I was growing up. You know, I think my mom had to like order a doll online from me or
Online,
something.
find it somewhere, too.
And they had an American Girl doll, the Addie doll. But to me, you know,
That
she
doll
had that
doesn't look-
really woolly
yeah.
hair, and she was like that stereotype of what a black girl looks like
Yeah.
for I think the white culture. And so I think that these new dolls and Barbies will definitely make a difference
Yeah.
in these young girls' lives.
Yeah. And then, of course, I couldn't have you on without talking about the hair issue, which still it still really does rear its head over and over. I see that now with my daughter, who's 9. The kids are just now getting to the age where they're seeing differences anyway,
Yeah.
and starting to sort of divide up along different lines. Hair is still a very big issue.
It really is. It really is. And I personally talk about, when I go to my workshops and in my book, I share personal testimony about my hair texture. I struggled a lot with having insecurities about my hair texture.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have family members talk about my hair. It's so nappy. It's not good hair.
It's not good hair,
Okay,
right?
do you know the
We've
definition
heard
of good
that.
hair?
Right, what
I'm
does that
still trying
mean,
to figure
right?
it out.
Sure,
But you know, they would talk about my hair, and then my friends would always want to play in my hair. Oh, they're just always looking at my hair. It's so nappy,
Right,
you know? So I would
right.
always hear those negative terms about my hair, even when I went to the hairstylist. So, you know, it created insecurities within me,
Right.
okay? So when I went to high school, what did I do? I wore extensions because I felt like, you know, having...
in order to
in order to be
fit in
beautiful or
and be
fit
beautiful,
in,
right.
I had to have them. So, you know, and it's still something that a lot of the girls, when I go to these schools, they struggle with. They want to wear extensions at 10 and 11, and because they see these women in the media
Sure.
having long hair.
And we have not gotten past that. I mean, you think of someone like Beyonce, you think of some of the other sort of prominent and famous African-American pop stars even.
Definitely.
Hair is still an issue for them,
Yeah,
obviously.
exactly.
Yeah.
But the young girls don't think that. They think, well, they wear this hair, or that's their hair, and it's so beautiful, so I have to have hair just like them.
I need hair like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And nothing's wrong with extensions. I mean, you know, I wear them from time to time as
Right.
well, but I feel like when you feel like you need them to be beautiful, that's when it creates a problem because
Yeah.
you're insecure about the hair that you have.
Yeah, I want to talk. We've got about 2 minutes left. I want to talk about image generally. I feel like we're at something of a crisis point with female image, and I guess I'm thinking immediately about the Kim Kardashian photo, which got so much attention. I thought that was really interesting because this was something she chose to do. That, in my estimation, was not flattering. I don't think a lot of people thought it was flattering. I think it lends credence to some of the stereotyping and awful sort of dynamics around female image and race and all those other things. That's got to make it tougher, I think, for little girls to sort their way through what you had to get through.
Most definitely. You know, B.E.A.U.T.I.F.U.L just did a recent study on African American girls and their self-esteem, and they found that 68% of our African American teenage girls don't feel like they measure up.
Right.
And so because of that, in society, and so
Right.
because of that, they look at people like Kim Kardashian posing nude, and they feel like, okay, well, she got like over how many hits
Right.
on Instagram?
Got all this attention.
Got all this attention, and some of it negative, some of it positive, but attention, period.
Right.
So in order for me to get attention, do I need to pose
Do I need to be
this
like
way?
that?
Do I
Sure.
need to be dressed provocative or sexy to, be considered beautiful or to get the attention that I'm looking for? And so it does. It creates a problem, for our girls, in trying to navigate through that and be bold enough to say, you know what, I don't have to
Right.
show my body
Right.
to,
We need
be
people
liked.
to be clicking on the picture of the young girl in a cap and gown, right?
Exactly,
as
right?
opposed to Kim Kardashian.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, good luck in your work, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, you can connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. Plus, you can now hear episodes of American Black Journal on WDET 1019 FM on Fridays at 9:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. We'll return with a new edition of American Black Journal on Sunday, December 28th. In the meantime, you can always go online to check out past episodes. We'll see you next time.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.